With the NFL draft over and done with, it is time to go out and give our grades to each and every single team. I have 8 videos lined up for you guys, each and every division, and letting you know how I felt about each and every team, what they did in their premium picks, their trades, their reaches, their steals. I wanted to give some context behind what these grades actually mean when I hand them out, and especially for day 3, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Days 1 and 2, the value and how good of a pick they were, but for day 3, I'm not going to sit here and hyper-analyze every single team's, 6th and 7th round pick and nitpick them and say, well, he was wide receiver 28 on my board and, you took him over wide receiver 24. It's like, at that point, it's just a little annoying to just go and nitpick every single draft pick. So most day 3 picks will be C plus, a fine pick. I'm not gonna like overly bury a team for that. C minus, I'll have picks that maybe I'm not as much of a fan of, but still, it's a 6th and 7th rounder. If you get a B minus, it's like that's a nice pick. I'm interested. I think that was a solid pick, a solid fit, decent value. If you get a B or better, and there was plenty of day 3 picks that got B plus, even A pluses in day 3, so that kind of scales upwards for how good of a value and how good of a pick that you made. I put in a lot of effort during this draft season, making sure I had like over 200 players scouted and got everything down, graded these things, and got the videos up to you as quick as I possibly can, so any support would be much appreciated. But I will be going through each of these teams in their divisions, I guess from worst to best, among the 4 teams. So let's get into our first team. If there was a draft in the NFL that so many people hated and were universally burying, it was the Cincinnati Bengals, who, yeah, they do come in last place in their division, but I don't think it was that bad as some people made it out to be. Like, I have it 24th to 26th, so still towards the bottom, but I do think there were worse drafts, and, maybe this is about as positive as you'll see somebody be on the Bengals draft, but Shamar Stewart, kind of funny in the sense that I think everybody kind of understands that Shamar has so much potential and has so much to him that you can unlock to be a really special edge rush player, but at the same time, it also felt like nobody wanted their team to take him, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, oh yeah, he could be really good. I don't want my team to take him, but he could be really good. And then the Bengals end up taking him, and it's like everyone's like, man, they spent the 17th pick on Shamar Stewart. It's like, I don't know why we're surprised by this. Everyone was saying that Shamar should be a first-round pick, and everyone was saying that he was a really good edge rusher, and he was a lot of people's edge 3, edge 4, edge 5. I don't see what the issue here is. A lot of people now are like saying, man, I can't believe the Bengals took Shamar Stewart. That's not a good pick. It's like, well, why not? Why is it not a good pick? Is it an amazing pick? Is it a home run? Is it a slam dunk? No, but is it a good pick? I don't see how it's just not a good pick at all. The Bengals need edge rushers. The Bengals need defense badly, like really badly. They go and pick, in their mind, the best edge player on the board. Now, I do think James Pierce would have been the best pick that they could have made here, for an edge player. But I think other than James Pierce, Shamar was my next highest rated edge available. And this is a team that, 1, like I said, needs it, and 2, they just need a star on defense, so they're taking a swing on a player who has crazy upside, crazy physical talents, crazy ability to be a special player. Is this the perfect ideal pick? No, but like so many people are giving this like a C, D grade, and it's like, why? What would you have done here? What was the alternative for the Bengals? I mean, I guess James Pierce would have netted them like an A minus from me. I guess taking, I don't know, maybe Malachi Starks would have been nice. Malachi Starks is a better player than Shamar probably. I think that there's a lot of other options that you maybe could have went, but not many of them I don't think would have been that much better than Shamar for what they need. So I think the hate for the Shamar Stewart pick is a little overdone. I don't see what the issue is. I very much understand the bust potential's here, though. Like, I'm not going to be ignorant to that. Like, there is high bust potential, but there's also very high just potential in general. Not just bust potential, but there's also, high risk, high reward with a pick like this. And the Bengals need more than just a couple of nice players to turn this defense around, because this defense that was getting 40 points dropped in their head a lot needs a star, and they have Trey Hendrickson, but for how long? Will Hendrickson be on this team long term? Will they get something done there? Will they trade him? What will be the future of Trey Hendrickson? This is a team that's let so much talent walk out the door as well. The Bengals have been a frustrating organization when it comes to just having talented players and just saying goodbye to them. Not paying Jesse Bates has gone down as a pretty big mistake that this team has made, because you could have all the cap space in the world and you can have all the picks in the world, but if you just let every star player you have walk out the door, then what's even the point? Now, they've seemed to try to rectify that. They kept T. Higgins, they kept Jamar Chase, they got Joe Burrow. Well, all that's on offense. You need some defense. I think Shamar Stewart is among the best picks they could have made at 17. Maybe they could have traded up for a bigger player. I don't think that was really in the realms of possibilities, but I don't see the issue here. Now, I won't say the rest of their draft was great. There's some nice picks, some okay picks. I don't love Demetrius Knight in the second round. That's kind of where I think maybe there was some missed opportunities. I don't think this team was in desperate need of a linebacker. Not to say that they couldn't use it, but if they just came out of this draft with like Barrett Carter in the fourth round, I think that would have been very much fine by me. I do like Logan Wilson, think he is a pretty nice player. So I was sitting there saying, like, man, this team could use a corner, like, pretty badly. This team could use a safety. If they came out of here, though, and selected whoever was available at the time, Revel was here at the time, Trey Amos was here at the time. If this team selected Trey Amos, I would have been praising the pick like crazy. Knight, this was a lot higher than I would have picked him. The only time I would have even considered it was like maybe once you get to the third round. This was not a dude I had all that highly rated. I mean, he's an older prospect who, started at quarterback, eventually moved to linebacker. He's got some athleticism, but he's a little undersized. Older prospect who isn't amazing. I don't love that. I think that's maybe even C plus was a little generous. I just maybe gave it a C plus just because at least he didn't pick an offensive player. Um, they need a defense, so I guess somebody's better than nobody, but still, I don't love that pick. That's kind of the one I'm most down on in terms of spending a premium draft pick and getting Demetrius Knight. Don't love that. A player that I did love, I talked about it with the Saints video, was Danny Stutzman, who went in the fourth round. And I'm like, man, if the Bengals came out there and got Danny Stutzman, I would have been like so pumped for that, because I think this Bengals draft could have been really good. You go and you pick Trey Amos in round 2. You go and pick Stutzman in round 4. You spend the round 3 pick on, I think Dylan Fairchild, we'll get to that, is a fine pick. If there was one position on this offense that needed to be picked and needed to be addressed, it was interior offensive line. So, while I wouldn't have minded if the Bengals just went all defense, I can definitely say if you're going to pick an offensive player, picking an interior offensive lineman was very needed. Now, this was, I thought, a pretty weak interior offensive line class, but Dylan Fairchild, pretty solid player, a tad higher than I would have taken him, but fills a need, and I do think is a solid player. Barrett Carter, we brought him up for a moment, but I do think that was a better linebacker pick than the Demetrius Knight one, as I do think Carter in the fourth round, that works for me. I think it was a guy who's got some tools to him. I do think maybe even long-term could be better than Demetrius Knight. I didn't have these two that far off when it came to their grades, enough to be like, yeah, that's a 60-70 pick difference between them. I didn't think it was that big of a difference, but Bengals end up with both of them. Then they go get Jalen Rivers in the 5th round. Again, if you're going to address anything on the offense, interior offensive line was the way to go, so I credit them there. Then Taj Brooks. I'm not a big Taj Brooks guy. I think that there's maybe better places that could have went, but again, 6th round pick. Not going to get too nitpicky with a 6th round pick. Overall, though, I don't think this was like an awful draft. I mean, there's so much negativity on this Bengals draft. I don't think it was bad. It wasn't great. It was just okay. Like, 24th to 26 is not amazing, but I don't think Shamar was a bad pick. I don't think Fairchild, Barrett Carter, Jalen Rivers were bad picks. Demetrius Knight's the only one I'd classify as maybe not a great pick, but even still, the team tried to address their edge rush needs, and it's not like their first round pick of Shamar Stewart was just a need pick. It was a value pick too. Like, Shamar at 17 is solid value as well. I just feel like I don't even know why people are as negative on it. Maybe they just don't think Shamar will be good. which I guess fair. I can definitely see where someone would not like Shamar in general. There are players in this class where it's like I fall on the end of just not liking them. But if you don't like Shamar, I understand that. I, like I said, would have preferred them go somewhere else, but don't think it's a bad pick. And there are worse drafts in my opinion. There are definitely worse drafts. So up next we get to B minus grades now. Both the Ravens and my number 2 team in the division both got B minuses, pretty interchangeable. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can say I didn't love the Ravens drafts. That's very rare. And when's the last time you could say, like, man, the Ravens didn't knock it out the park with a draft? I don't think it was a bad draft, but like, the Ravens have had such high standards for their drafts where it's like, man, this one is on the lower end. Still, again, B minus. It's all right. You start at the top where I do think you crushed it. Malachi Starks. Dude, that's so crazy that the Ravens could just sit there at 27 and take Malachi Starks. And when that happened, I'm sitting there like, oh boy, we're going to do this again. The Ravens are going to crush it out. They're going to knock it out the park with another draft. Because you go and get Malachi Starks at 27, which is going to allow you to do so much on that defense. And, like, now you got Kyle Hamilton allowed to actually play the role Hamilton does. The Ravens, because of the struggles that they were having, I mean, Marcus Williams was a little rough, and some of the other members of the secondary weren't really pulling their weight. They had to go and say, hey, I know, Kyle Hamilton, you're really good playing at this part, but we need you to back up a little bit because we're getting torched back here, or we're having issues. We need you to maybe step outside what your normal role is and play, you know, a little further off the line of scrimmage. And while Hamilton was able to do that effectively, that wasn't where Hamilton was used best, and you weren't maximizing your talent. You just weren't, because Hamilton is at his best playing closer to the line of scrimmage, being allowed to just roam the middle of the field, be that star player. Well, if you want Hamilton to do that, you need to go and get somebody who can play behind him. Malachi Stark can play behind him, and this was the number 1 safety in the draft, a guy who has all the ability in the world to become a top 10 safety in this league. And now you're looking at it and saying, well, we got Malachi Starks playing back behind you, and then Kyle Hamilton, you can go resume doing what you do best. We could be looking at the best safety duo in the league in a year or two, and that in itself is well worth the A grade, well worth the 27th overall pick, because not only are you getting a great player in Malachi Starks, you're allowing Kyle Hamilton to do what he does best at making him a better player. So, love the first round pick, and I have no complaints with what they did there. Now, the second round, this one's gonna be divisive. I can say that purely as an on-field player, Mike Green at pick 59 is better than a B minus. I was not as high on Mike Green as some, to where I didn't have him as like a top 20 player, top 25 player. I had him as around 1 to 2, you know, in like the 30s. I thought, like, purely as an on-field player, he was a dude you could take in the first round, but I mean, obviously the off-field stuff, if it wasn't for the off-field stuff, he would have probably been a first-round pick, but I wasn't as high as on Mike Green as an overall player, and then when you take into account the off-field stuff, I can't give you that high of a grade. I think that's very understandable why you can't give somebody a super high grade for picking Mike Green. He is just seemingly not a good person. You know, you always have to put like allegedly or potentially or seemingly behind that, so you know, you don't, in the event that they are not a bad person. But I think it's pretty clear cut with all the stuff that has come out with Mike Green and the interviews and the getting kicked off of Virginia and all these no tolerance things that he has just blown through, and he's just not a good person. He should not be in the NFL. He should not be here, but he's here because teams will overlook what you do off the field because you're a talented player. And Mike Green, just strictly as an on-field presence, will be a much needed presence in that edge room. Again, as just a player, he'll help, but hard for me to grade it too highly. If I were giving this a grade strictly as a on-field product and a on-field player, it'd be like an A minus. If I am grading it with knowing everything that we know about him, it's a B minus, because he is a problem as a human being. So I don't want to talk about Mike Green too much. I'd prefer not to. So we'll move on to Emory Jones, who At one point in time early on in the season, Emory Jones had some hype behind him. I was seeing him in some first, second round mock drafts, and he was one of those guys who had some early thoughts that he could be a high draft pick. Now, by the time the end of the season came and he had some struggles, he didn't perform the best at LSU in his final year, kind of knocked him down. I was a little surprised to see him go in the third round. I didn't have him in my top 100 players. I probably had more of a fourth round grade on him, but again, late third compared to a fourth round grade, that's fine. And, well, I do think Emory Jones is going to project more as a interior offensive lineman, probably a guard at the NFL level, even though he played tackle at LSU. So, a guard in the third round that did have some good tape out there. There is good tape on Emory Jones. I do think is a solid pick. You know, maybe his stock was plummeting, but I do think snagging him here at pick 91 is at least, it intrigues me a little bit to think that they can get something out of him as a long-term player at this offensive line. So, day 2, you get a character, and then you get a stock plummeting guard who either that stock will continue to plummet or maybe he can kind of figure things out moving inside the guard. So they're going for that talent there. That's what the Ravens do, even though I'm not as much in love with it as years past. But I really think day 3 is where I wasn't in love with it either, because they went out and they had a bunch of picks. And Teddy Buchanan, all right, solid developmental linebacker, that's fine. Carl Vincent, solid, fine. Get a kicker. You're going to need a kicker because you got other personal issues to figure out with Justin Tucker. So, sure. LeJontay Wester, not a receiver I was huge on as a day 3 prospect. I thought there were other better receivers that you could take, even his own teammate in Jimmy Horn. I thought the best and the highlight of their day 3, though, was Aeneas Peebles, who is very much that undersized Osa Odigizua type interior D lineman. Obviously not as good as maybe Osa, but maybe he could become that. I thought if there was any day 3 player that the Ravens fans should be a little bit more excited for, it is Aeneas Peebles, who can come in on certain situations and rotate in well and rush the passer for them. So I thought you at least got that as something to be, you know, positive about. But the rest of this draft class, man, not big on it. Again, it's weird to say this. Like, I don't love this Ravens draft class, and I don't know. Like, do you like this class as much as other Ravens classes of the past? Because I do think in totality you got a rotational D lineman. Maybe you get a starting kicker. You know, kickers are who knows what you're getting when you draft a kicker, but you get a developmental linebacker, developmental tackle, developmental guard. You get a decent player in Mike Green who's not a good person, and the only kind of luck that you got, the only thing that you can really hang your hat on, is you got Malachi Starks. I don't know. It's weird because the grade for this draft would probably be a tick higher overall if Mike Green wasn't a terrible person. So it's a weird class, and I don't love it overall. So yeah, the Ravens kind of where maybe I'm a little negative for them, but you know, I do care about the off-the-field stuff. I do care about the type of person you are. I don't want these types of people like Mike Green on my team, so you're going to get knocked for that. I don't think that that's crazy to say. Now, the other B- comes with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where thought it was a little bit less controversial, a little less confusing. Everything kind of lined up here. Everything made sense for the Steelers, especially their first 2 picks. They go and take Derek Carman at 21. I do think Derek Carman was my 21st player on the board, and he went 21, so you pretty much nailed it value-wise. This was a position of need in the long term. You are going to need someone to replace Cam Hayward down the line, and this is going to be the guy. I think Harmon is so technically sound, such a well-rounded, nice player. Maybe needs to get a little bit better in his run defense, but he'll have time to develop that because, you know, he doesn't have to come in and be the guy in the interior right away. You have some help there, and I do think long-term this is going to be an awesome pick, and not to say you're going to be getting Cam Hayward all over again in terms of that caliber of player for the next decade, but if Derek Harmon is a 10-year starter and is a lifer here in Pittsburgh, making Pro Bowls, I'm not going to be surprised. He is somebody that I think is really difficult to block in the one-on-ones. I talked about him a little bit more in my top 100 video, where I thought he was like one of the hardest people to block in the interior when it came to getting one-on-ones. If you get him in those situations, he'll make you look a little silly at times, and I do just like his technical ability, how sound he is in a lot of his rush moves at this age. You don't get guys this polished. There's so many players that I've talked about where it's like, man, get a little bit more consistent, need a little bit more polished, need to get a little more technically refined. Harmon needs to get a little bit more consistent, but he's got a lot of technical sound abilities to him. Very Steeler-like pick. And speaking of very Steeler-like pick, Caleb Johnson was probably the most Steeler running back in this draft. You go and you lose Najee Harris, and I don't think you're going to be too mad about it, because in the third round you snag Caleb Johnson, and he's going to just slot right in and be even a better fit probably than Najee. I think Caleb can actually perform better in this Arthur Smith offense than what Najee gave you. I think Caleb has a little bit more juice to him, and the running back duo of Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren, I mean, I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off at all. So I think you basically just took your third-round pick and said, well, we lost Najee, let's just re-up a running back on a rookie contract and go and get potentially 4 more consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons out of our running back. So good pick there. Jack Sawyer in the 4th round. Don't love Jack Sawyer as a NFL player. He was one of those players that I think is definitely going to go down as really nice college player. Just don't think he has it as an athlete at the NFL level. Don't think he has it from a physical tools standpoint. He's a very unspectacular athlete, but the Steelers don't care about that. I mean, they don't care about your athleticism. I mean, their team definitely has a lot more mental than it does maybe physical skill on the defensive side of the football. They just want guys who can play, and Jack Sawyer, at the very least, as a rotational edge rusher, can play. So I don't hate the pick. I don't love the pick. Then you go Yaya Black in the 5th round, defensive lineman from Iowa. Just keep building up those trenches. That is 3 of your first 4 picks on the defensive line. 6th round, you go Will Howard. There was a lot of talk of, will they go Shador? Will they pick somebody else? Well, this very much tells me Aaron Rodgers should be a Steeler. If Aaron Rodgers kind of spurs out in the Steelers, if Aaron Rodgers kind of, leaves the Steelers hanging, that'd be pretty rough for them, I guess. I mean, a lot of people are maybe, a little bit overreacting with their lack of addressing the quarterback position, because they're like, you're really going to roll in the next season with Mason Rudolph. It's like, they probably are getting Aaron Rodgers, unless Aaron just decides to have a little bipolar moment and says, I'm going to go and spend the next 5 months in a cave or something. Then you could be worried. But Will Howard in the 6th round, I do think is actually a pretty nice pick. This is a dude who is going to be, I think, long-term a nice backup. I don't think it has starter upside to him, but, I was really kind of hoping for the Steelers take, because I talked about him in the NFC East video with the Eagles. I thought Kyle McCord to the Steelers would have been really interesting. They ended up with Will Howard. I don't think you're expecting Howard to be a starter. I thought at least Kyle McCord had some starter traits and I had some starter upside to him, but Howard more so going to be a backup. Then you go and you snag a linebacker in a corner in the 7th round. Overall, not a spectacular class. Not anything bad, though. This is by no means a bad class. This is just, you didn't hit any home runs, but you didn't strike out, I don't think. This is a class where you hit a double, maybe you hit a triple, and then you just hit a couple of singles. Nothing crazy here. But Caleb Johnson and Derek Harmon are very on-brand Steeler picks who are going to be impact players and who are going to do their job. And I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Caleb Johnson's running for 1,000 yards. I'm not going to be surprised if Derek Harmon's a long-term Steeler. And maybe if you get something else out of the rest of these picks in day 3, you can be happy with it. But for a class that had 7 players, I think you got 2 impact players, and you'll see with the rest of the other 5. So I thought it was an okay job from them. And then maybe one of the longer conversations we'll end up having for draft grades, because only the Browns, man, only the Browns could come out of here with this type of haul, and everyone is universally clowning on them for their draft, which the criticism that they are getting is valid. I will say that. This is the most confusing grade I've had to give out, because I don't know what the... It's almost like when you're in school and you do the wrong thing, but you get the right answer. it's kind of like that. You do the wrong process, or you complete the math problem the wrong way, but you get the right answer, but you still get a bad grade because like you didn't show your work and you didn't do it properly, and then it's like, well, I got the right answer, so what's the problem? But it's like you didn't do it right, you just somehow got the right answer. It feels like what the Browns did. They got the right answer, but they went about it in the most confusing way that I have seen in a long time. I think I'll just start at the top and say I am isolated looking at this Mason Graham pick, saying the pick itself is good. I would have said that the Jaguars at 5, if the Jaguars stayed at 5, Mason Graham was who I thought they should have picked. So Mason Graham going 5 is valid. Mason Graham is a top 5 player in this class. I think if it wasn't for the fact that his arms are a little short for your liking, Mason Graham would have been, bordering on, I don't want to say generational, but like that type of defensive lineman where that's like the only flaw I can think of with Mason Graham. For any Browns fan who's sitting there being like, man, we didn't get Travis Hunter, so it stinks. Like, Mason Graham's a really good player. You should not be, mad at not having Travis Hunter because you have Mason Graham. Mason Graham obviously isn't Travis Hunter. We'll get to that conversation in a moment, but Mason Graham's going to be a really good player for this defense. So now you go to the reason that you even have Mason Graham, which is the trade. I'm going to, kind of play both sides for a second here, and then kind of give my 2 cents on this one, because there is 2 sides to this. The first side is what a lot of Browns fans wanted, which is just take Travis Hunter, and you are not going to get a chance at a guy like Travis Hunter for a decade, more than a decade. You are not going to get a chance at Travis Hunter for a very long time. We throw the word generational out a lot. And even in the strictest usage of the word generational prospect, Travis Hunter still fits into that category of generational. He's not going to be in next year's draft class. He will not be in the next 10 draft classes. You will not find somebody that good, that special. So just for that reason, you should take Travis Hunter. And you should not even think twice about that. With whatever issues you have on your roster, taking Travis Hunter, regardless of need, regardless of cap situation, regardless of any of these other issues, you could sit there and say, well, we have Travis Hunter, so that's cornerback, that's wide receiver, that's a special prospect, and no amount of draft picks that we can get in a trade is going to amount to what Travis Hunter can be for us as a player. That is maybe the argument that Browns fans and a lot of other people are saying, man, the Browns are stupid for passing up on Travis Hunter. And that is a valid argument, but I will play the other side for a second and say this. When it comes to the Browns situation, they put themselves here. I don't think anyone is going to argue that. They made this situation as bad as it is to necessitate this trade. I don't think anyone's going to argue the Browns put themselves in this situation, because the only reason this trade was a necessity is because of the bad decisions that they made. This team is, in a lot of areas, old, slowly declining. In some positions were rapidly declining last year with that offensive line and Nick Chubb, and now Nick Chubb's gone, and the offensive line's still a little rough, and now you're also in a cap nightmare scenario because at least for the next 2 years, Deshaun Watson's going to be making $70 million. You paid Myles Garrett $40 million. Like half your cap space almost is in 2 players. This team is in a nightmare scenario. And I think you very much can look at it and say, you take Travis Hunter, but what does that do for you? Like, as good as Travis Hunter is, and as high praise as I have for him, because I have as high utmost praise Travis Hunter as you could possibly have. I think he's one of the greatest prospects to ever step foot in the NFL draft. But what the heck does Travis Hunter even do for you at this point? Because for as good as he is, and as much as he could play 2 positions, even just 2 great players aren't going to help dig this Browns team out of this hole. You need a lot of players, you need cheap players. And at least for the next 2 to 3 years, you'd be looking at it and saying we'd be wasting the first 2 years of Travis Hunter's career because this team isn't going anywhere. Like, as long as they're handicapped and stuck with Deshaun Watson and an aging roster, they don't have anything to be excited about. This team has such a bleak future. So you'd be looking at that and saying, well, do we want to just sit here and take Travis Hunter and waste the first 2, maybe 3 years. I mean, with the type of hole that they are in, they would need to nail their draft picks, nail every move, nail everything, and maybe in 2 years you turn this thing around. And do you really trust the Browns in 2 years to turn this thing around? Maybe if Shador hits, maybe if Shador is as good as some people think he could be, maybe if you nail every draft pick and you get some help and you get a breakout here and there, maybe. But I mean, by the time this Browns team might be able to do anything, Travis Hunter is going to be 3rd year, 4th year. And by that point, you just wasted him. And not to say like, oh, well, it's fine to waste Mason Graham, but Mason Graham, you know, you're getting more picks, you're getting another player who's going to be really good and can be a good player for a long time and maybe won't burn himself out, because Travis Hunter, if there is one worry about him, he might burn himself out a little earlier because of how much he's going to be playing. So that is a legitimate concern. So when I'm looking at playing both sides here, I do think trading down is not the bad move. My dilemma with it is you didn't get enough. I don't think trading down is a problem, but for me, to put the premium on what Travis Hunter is, and I don't care what, like, trade chart, there's probably some, like, one of those trade charts where they put, like, point values onto the draft picks and everything, and they use that in the NFL to make certain trades. There is a premium. No amount of points can be, you know, determine the value of a quarterback or determine the value of a special player like Travis Hunter. For me, I wouldn't have wanted to start the trade down process unless I was getting another first round pick. For me, I'm sitting here saying, you want Travis Hunter, give me 2 extra first round picks, not 1. Especially when it comes to the fact that the Jaguars, I do think, have the potential to win the division next year, and I do think have a lot more to be excited about, in the sense that, like, this is not a team that could just crash and burn and give you a top 5 pick, I don't think, unless they get wrecked by injuries, but you're not banking on that. These are not going to be, I think, premium top 5, even top 10 first round picks. For me, I'm thinking, you know, you give me pick 15 to 20 next year, you give me pick 10 to 20 the year after, whatever the case may be, then I can at least sit there and say, well, you didn't take Travis Hunter, but you got Mason Graham, and you got 2 extra firsts, plus whatever else they throw in. To me, that would have at least made it easier to digest as a Browns fan. Only getting 1 first round pick hurts, but the Browns put themselves in this situation. They put themselves here by doing this Deshaun Watson trade. They put themselves here by paying him. They put themselves here by their bad decisions. This is the repercussions of a bad organization making bad decisions. You put yourself in a no-win situation where either you take Travis Hunter and you waste away his first couple of years, or you trade out of Travis Hunter and everyone's mad that you traded out of Travis Hunter. There was a no-win situation there, because if you took Travis Hunter, it would look good right now, but I don't know how good it'd look in a couple of years. Picking Mason Graham at 5 would have given you an A grade, but the trade down, and I feel like not getting as much as you could have gotten, knocks it down to an A-. I do overall think, though, trading down wasn't as bad of a decision as some people made it out to be. And the rest of this draft class, aside from 1 pick, I thought was really good. So you go to the second round. Carson Swessinger was the clear-cut number 2 linebacker in this class. And you weren't able to get Jahad Campbell. He went 2 picks before in the first round. And, you know, if you needed a linebacker, this was maybe a tad bit higher than I would have taken him. But he was the number 2 linebacker. And he's the only other linebacker that I would have trusted to be like a legit good player, and not say like, man, you're really banking on a lot of development here. You're really banking on, you know, him learning actually how to play the position at the NFL level. I think Swessinger is about as safe, probably the safest linebacker pick, because even Campbell has like the shoulder injuries, and we'll see what that entails for him if he can stay healthy. But in terms of just a nice player, Carson Swessinger and JOK Usu-Koromoa, yeah, sign me up for that linebacking duo, because I love that. And then the Browns, with the other second round pick, I think hit a home run here. And they take Quinshon Judkins, who I absolutely love. I love this pick. I love it so much. And this was a player who, the more and more I watched, and the closer and closer I got to the draft, the more and more I love Judkins. to the point where I was like, yeah, he's just clear cut the number 3 running back in this class. And I just really love Judkins. I think he's just so rock solid. He's so reliable. And for being such a high floor player, in my opinion, I also do think he provides you with a really nice ceiling. And I think he's got a lot more speed than maybe some give him credit for. I think the athleticism that he showed at Ole Miss is there. I just think maybe if he was a little bit less explosive at Ohio State, that was just because maybe he wasn't put in the situations. TreVeyon Henderson took away a lot of those explosive reps. Judkins was there to do a little bit more of the dirty work, but that's not to say he can't be an explosive player and a true every down back on whatever team he goes to and hit some home runs from time to time. I think he gives you a high floor as a starter while also giving you some big play potential. Not as much maybe as TreVeyon Henderson or not as much as obviously like Genty, but I think Judkins is maybe like the safest pick outside of Genty to just be a good running back. Even with Amari and Hampton, you can at least see some aspects of where he could falter. Maybe some of the vision isn't the best with Hampton, and sometimes Hampton doesn't always try to be creative in open field. Judkins, to me, though, I think he's got good vision. I think he is a little creative. I think he's got good long speed. I think he's got everything you want in a running back, and I love this pick so much. And for a team that needed a running back and a team that needed to move on in a post-Nick Chubb run game, well, this is your guy for a long time, I feel like. So, I think they first 3 picks, just looking at the players that they got, nice job. Then you go with your next pick, 67. I wouldn't have pegged the Browns to be a Harold Fannin team. I'm curious about that, but Harold Fannin and David Njoku seems kind of fun. I don't know how that's all gonna piece together, but I did think Harold Fannin at the very least needed to go to a team that had a playable other tight end, someone who could be a little bit more of a traditional tight end. Maybe you were thinking a team that had more of like a maybe Jake Ferguson, Cole Kmet, one of these other players that had one of these just kind of generic inline traditional wide tight ends. And David Njoku obviously can play in line, but David Njoku is also a dude who's got some versatility to him. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, how much versatility is this tight end room going to have? What are they going to do with both Fannin and Njoku if they're on the field at the same time? Fannin's a dude who lined up out wide. I don't think he's going to line up out wide much in the NFL, but he's going to be very much in the slot a good amount. I don't know how much he's going to play in line because David Njoku might take up those reps to play in line tight end, because even though Njoku's got some versatility himself, he's definitely going to be a better inline tight end than Fannin. How often are these guys going to maybe line up in the backfield? I'm very curious to how this is going to work. And maybe if Fannin's just going to very quickly replace Njoku, maybe by next year, maybe this is where they're going to be cutting some of the costs. And, Njoku could be on his way out in a year or two, maybe as soon as just next year, though. Isolated, though, 67th pick for Harold Fannin. Good value. And I really like the player. A lot of people are divisive on Fannin. Are you a believer? Do you think his style can work? Or do you think it is just he's too gimmicky? Is he just not an NFL athlete? I'm on the side of I think Harold Fannin works in the NFL. I think he's got some of the best hands in this draft. He's so hard to bring down after the catch. I think he's got so much versatility usage. And as long as you have him in an offense with a creative offensive mind, he can work. I think Harold Fannin will work at the NFL level. So for me, I'm sitting here saying, well, 4 for 4 in your first 4 picks. And you get to the 5th pick, which is maybe the most baffling pick of the draft, arguably. So we get to the point now where we need to have the Shedeur conversation. I guess I'll just knock it out of the way pretty quickly. Dylan Sampson in the 4th round, sure, why not? I wasn't a big Dylan Sampson guy. I had him right on the fringe of that top 100 list. I think I had him 97th, getting him at 126. It is about fine. Him and Judkins as a 1-2 punch can be okay. But let's talk about the quarterbacks, where Shedeur, to me, it was interesting how I started to kind of like turn a little bit throughout this draft, because I'm not a Shedeur guy. But man, Shedeur was a lot better than a 5th round pick. And I think everyone can understand that at the very least, except if you're maybe like a just complete Shedeur hater. I'm not a Shedeur lover, but I still slapped a 2nd to 3rd round grade on him. I still was sitting there saying, if you need a quarterback, I don't love him in the 2nd round, but I get it. But I'd probably start to think about taking him in the 3rd round. Like, I would sit there and say, like, okay, I need a high floor quarterback. I don't need to, like, have the type of investment in a third round pick to say, like, I need to give this guy a chance. Like, if you take a guy in the first round, for example, like Jackson Dart, you get the 5th-year option, and also you're tied to him. You traded up for him. He was a first round pick. You have to give him a little bit of more opportunities. Shedeur, for me, I was like, okay, I don't love any of these quarterbacks in the first round other than Cam Ward. But if I'm going to take somebody, third round, Shedeur or Jalen Milroe, you go Milroe for the upside, or you go Shedeur for the floor. I think he should have been picked in the third round, especially with some of the names that were going off the board, because I think Shedeur is better than Tyler Shuck. I didn't like Tyler Shuck, but it's like, okay, well, sure, Tyler Shuck has something there, I guess. I don't see much, but sure. I at least understand Jackson Dart because there's some upside there. I understand Milroe, the physical tools are there. Once you get to Dillon Gabriel, though, I don't know what the heck you're doing. Once you get to Dillon Gabriel being a third round pick, at that point, that just hurts more than the prank calls. The prank calls are messed up. But for me, I would rather get prank called than have me sit there looking at the draft and saying, man, I didn't go day 2 because Dillon Gabriel went day 2. And this is not to hate on Dillon Gabriel, but this is just not a third round quarterback. This is a 5th round quarterback at best. Like, if you would have flipped Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel's draft spots, I wouldn't have given Dillon Gabriel, like, a high grade. I would have given it maybe, like, a C, but at least it's like, okay, 5th round. It is what it is. You spent a top 100 pick on Dillon Gabriel? Are you kidding me? This dude is a pure backup quarterback who is probably just going to be one of the more boring backup quarterbacks in the league, who doesn't even provide you much upside. Like, if you're taking a quarterback in the third round, you at least have some hopes that he could be a starter, or you at least have some idea that maybe, teams take quarterbacks in the third round with hopes. Teams took, Malik Willis for the upside. They took Desmond Ridder, and Desmond Ridder got to start way more than he deserved to start. Like, teams will take quarterbacks in the third round and at least give them a chance and have some optimism. It's not often you just see a team take a third round pick and just burn it, basically. This is just a nothing pick, because at that point, when you take Dillon Gabriel, what even is the point of taking Shedeur? Like, why'd you even, if you were going to take Shedeur, why'd you take Dillon Gabriel? That's what I don't get. And this is where you go back to, you got the right answer by doing the complete wrong thing. If you would have just taken Shedeur at pick 94, I would have given it like a B+ grade and said, cool, you got Shedeur and maybe you got a quarterback. Why'd you take Dillon Gabriel? I don't get it. So, Gabriel gets an F. I didn't give out many Fs. I can count on one hand the amount of Fs I gave out throughout this draft. This is one of them, because this is just a nothing pick. This is just wasting a pick. Like, it's just, even if you took Shedeur, or even if you didn't take Shedeur, I guess I should say, it still would be a bad pick. But the fact that you just took a better quarterback later, I don't get it. But then you get to Shedeur at pick 144, which, again, a lot lower than he should have been taken. And I understand the personality may be an issue for some people, and the interviews, he didn't interview well. I get that. And me personally, I don't like Shedeur, the player, and I don't like Shedeur, maybe the leader. I wasn't big on him. The problem I have with him is I just don't think he's a high-ceiling quarterback. But he's not 5th round bad. He's not that bad. He is an accurate thrower of the football. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be Mel Kiper and say he should have been like the top pick, and I'm not going to sit here and, Mel Kiper was having generational rants on Shedeur, comparing him to like Peyton Manning and every single quarterback in the earth. I'm not going to sit here like Mel Kiper and have a generational rant just every 5 minutes and just say, like, man, Shedeur should have been number 1. Shedeur should have been this. He's Peyton Manning. He's this. He'll make the league pay. He's the greatest thing ever. It's like, no, he's not that. He shouldn't have been a 1st round pick, but he should have been a day 2 pick. He should have at least been a 4th round pick. In the 5th round, Shedeur is good value. Shedeur is a good pick. I don't know if Cleveland is the best spot for him. I don't love Cleveland. Makes me curious, did like Dion make a call or something to get Shedeur down there? Because it just doesn't feel like the Browns had any intentions of drafting him. I don't know. I do think, though, in a quarterback room of what? Dillon Gabriel, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett. I think Shedeur is probably the best quarterback there. Like, it's not a high bar, but I do think that Shedeur probably is going to be this team's starter soon. I don't know how much he'll play in year 1, but I do think Shedeur will start a game in his rookie season, at least. And I do think he will be the best quarterback on this team unless they bring in somebody from the outside. But if you are rolling in there with all those other quarterbacks and then Deshaun Watson, who's going to be injured and he'll still probably be stuck on the team for another year beyond that, Shador's probably going to be this team's quarterback out and out as the starter going into like the 2026 season. So to get that in the 5th round, at the very least, even if he's not going to be great, is good value. Overall, I like this Browns draft class. You may have gotten the right answers in the complete wrong ways. You might have missed out on Travis Hunter. You might not have gotten as much as you should have in the trade. But isolated, you look at Mason Graham, it's a good pick. You look at Schlesinger, it's a good pick. You look at Judkins, it's a good pick. You look at Fannin, it's a good pick. You look at Shador, it's a good pick. That's 5 picks right there out of your 7 that I think are really good. You might have wasted one in Dalen Gabriel, but if you can come out of a draft with a potential Pro Bowl All-Pro interior defensive lineman, a starting linebacker, a starting running back, and 2 players in that linebacker and running back, I think it would be really good. A potential starting tight end, and a potential starting quarterback, even if it's not the highest upside quarterback, that's a good draft. And you do have another first-round pick that you got from it for next year. Is it the best draft? No, because it got a tier 2, but a lot of the people just saying, well, they drafted Dylan Gabriel, Shador, and they traded away from Travis Hunter, and they just say it's a bad draft. I think that's a little crazy. Like, you have to look at what else they got. These first 4 picks, they knocked it out of the park with that. Like, you might get to the right answers in the most odd ways, but they got the right answers at the end. And for this Browns team, while I don't think it's going to be a quick turnaround, you set a nice foundation, I feel like. And if Shador does prove a lot of people wrong, and if he does have a higher ceiling than I am giving him credit for, then this is going to be a great class, like a crazy class. To me, Shador, his ceiling is that of a fine, average, middle-of-the-pack starter. My comp for him is just Teddy Bridgewater, and that's, I guess, pre-injury Teddy Bridgewater when he was a solid, okay starting quarterback for the Vikings. I think he can be that. That's better than what they have, at least. And to upgrade at quarterback in the 5th round, sure, that's a good pick, even if you don't like Shador. He obviously has to figure out some stuff from a personality standpoint, just kind of become a better leader, maybe not throw some of his teammates under the bus like he has before with his offensive linemen, maybe just learn to be a bit more of a pro. I'm not in the interview room, though. I don't know what the personality issues are exactly with Shador. I'm not going to act like I interviewed him. It's just from what I've seen. To me, I don't mind this. This is, I think, in totality, a good draft class. So I know this one's probably going to spark some debates, and I know there's a lot of strong opinions on Shador. Ultimately, I was not a Shador guy going into the draft. I did not like him as an upside player, but the prank calls, the disrespect of Dylan Gabriel getting drafted ahead of him, falling to the 5th round, I can say I kind of am rooting for him a little bit. And I at least am a little bit more interested to see if Shador can prove people wrong. So let me know what you thought. If the Browns, am I overrating the Browns draft class a little bit? Is them just passing on Travis Hunter and drafting Dylan Gabriel just so unforgivable that the rest of the draft doesn't matter? Or did they have a good draft class and you agree with me? Maybe the Ravens, maybe you disagree there. Maybe you disagree with the Steelers had a better draft than I gave them credit for, which I thought I gave them a decent amount of credit. But let me know what you all think. Trying to get these videos out. 8 videos in a week is a lot. So if you could show any support, like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys all in the next one.